Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Dhaka, which deals with large industry in Bangladesh, and Dhaka Chamber of Commerce and Industry, which the membership is largely composed of SMEs. The Business Initiative Leading Development, BUILD, which is a public-private dialogue platform, again formed by Metropolitan Chamber, Dhaka Chamber, Chittagong Chamber of Commerce, the SME Foundation, and so the Chittagong Stock Exchange Limited to represent the capital markets in Bangladesh. And it is one of our major partners is Policy Exchange, which has been formed by Dr. Mashoor Riaz as a policy think tank, but as an action-orientated policy think tank. Our principal purpose is to, this Resurgent Bangladesh is only a platform for the next 2 to 3 years. It is our intention, in light of the COVID-19, COVID-19 pandemic, to do 2 or 3 things, and to do them in light of trying to bring the economy of Bangladesh back into speed. And what we plan to do is to systematically assess the impact on the private sector and develop recovery strategies from the COVID-19 pandemic for key economic themes. We wish to enable the private sector to provide organized, evidence-based, and actionable inputs and recommendations to the government of Bangladesh for the preparation of a national economic recovery strategy. We will facilitate public-private dialogue on necessary government of Bangladesh policy actions for stimulating private sector recovery, including input into the budgetary process. And as you know, our budgetary process for this year is ongoing now. We wish to facilitate a collective and coordinated position and response by and among key private sector bodies for a greater and quicker impact. And we wish to enable the voice of smaller and individual firms regarding the challenges arising from COVID-19 to be heard by the policymakers so that they can get the required support. We have chosen certain thematic areas. Those thematic areas of cooperation will be manufacturing, service and domestic trade, international trade and export, SMEs, private investment, and the financial sector. In line with this, we have spoken to BIDA and the esteemed executive chairman of BIDA, as well as the private sector advisor to the Honorable Prime Minister. And today's meeting is part of our effort to start the conversation on the economic recovery of Bangladesh, because we understand that in the post-COVID world, Bangladesh will require a lot of investment, and a lot of that investment will have to be foreign direct investment. Now, one of the things that we know that Bangladesh does lag behind in attracting foreign direct investment, although the government has taken significant steps to try and attract FDI. So our purpose today in inviting all of you to join us was not so much to tell you what we have done, which of course the Honorable esteemed Chairman of BIDA will do, but to hear from you that if you wish to come to Bangladesh, what you will want from us. And that is very important for us. So with that, I will hand over to the Honorable Executive Chairman of BIDA to make his introductory remarks. And once again, a very warm welcome to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Distinguished President of Resurgent Bangladesh, Dr. Mashoor Riaz, MCCI President, Barrister Nihat Kabir, participants from Singapore, China, and Japan, including government dignitaries and leaders from the private sector, members of the Resurgent Bangladesh, my colleagues from BIDA and IFC. Assalamu alaikum and very good morning to all of you. At the very outset, please allow me to thank Resurgent Bangladesh to have this virtual meeting arranged. I'm really excited to present Bangladesh and then its investment opportunities to this very enlightened gathering. I hope and wish that all of you are safe and healthy amidst this worldwide difficult pandemic time. Well, to present Bangladesh, I must talk about how Bangladesh is doing economically. Over the last few decades, Bangladesh has made stellar economic growth. Poverty rate has dropped to 20.5% in 2019 from 31.5% in 2010. A significant step towards reaching the first Sustainable Development Goals target of eradicating extreme poverty by 2030. Well, continued rise in per capita income has helped the country across the threshold to become a lower middle income country, and remarkable achievements in human development have made Bangladesh a textbook example of global development. In 2018, Bangladesh meets the criteria for the first time to graduate from United Nations Least Development Countries, that is LDC, to the category of developing country by 2024. Well, from 2000 onwards, Bangladesh economy has been consistently growing over at 6% a year on average, a great feat that many of the advanced industrial nations would seek to achieve. In fact, during the last decade, from 2010 up to date, the average growth rate is more than 7%. Last year, we achieved 8.2% GDP growth. And I believe that this growth, despite the corona onslaught, will continue in the years to come. Once this corona pandemic subsides, definitely we will be coming back, and we will try our best to keep on this growth rate. During this time, the country's total export volume reaches to a massive $36 billion in 2018 from only $7 billion in 2000, mostly driven by RMG. Drawing on this impressive records, Bangladesh has laid out its grand vision to become an upper middle income country by 2021. And as you know, that our Honorable Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, she has a vision and declared that by 2030 we'll achieve the SDG goals, and by 2041 we'll become rich country in South Asia. Okay. Attaining upper middle income status to sustainable growth will require a significant increase in private investment in productive sector, diversification of export basket, and the improvement of overall competitiveness. Let me share the target set by our 7th five-year plan, which emphasizes on increase in gross investment from 29% to 34% of GDP. Increase in private investment from 22% to 27% of GDP. A near 2/3 increase in export to $54 billion. The plan accentuates Bangladesh's massive demand for infrastructure investment, $9 billion annually, while global infrastructure outlook estimates 24.3 billion annually till 2040. Will have to be made substantially through cross-border investment. Bangladesh places critical importance on FDI for several reasons. FDI is not only a useful source of long-term financing, but an excellent vehicle for mobilizing additional resources, transferring technology, adopting modern management practices, and promoting firm efficiency. FDI in Bangladesh is mostly reinvestment of retained earnings, reflecting investor confidence, but also there are some constraints, I must admit. More than 50% of the FDI in Bangladesh are reinvestment. This shows confidence in the economy among the existing investors. However, the low level of FDI and absence of new investor also indicates problems related to greenfield entry barriers, valuation challenges, and some repatriation restrictions which are being removed already. We are taking initiatives to remove all the barriers. The average annual FDI inflow in Bangladesh is lower than comparable economies. For the past decade, inflows have averaged at 0.9% of GDP in Bangladesh, compared to 3% in China, 5.5% in Ethiopia, 2.6% in Philippines, 6.6% in Vietnam, 4.6% in Malaysia, and 2.1% in India. In 2017, the sector distribution of FDI was concentrated in business like telecom, 24%, power and energy, 20%, banking and trading, 11%. Inflows are primarily from UK, USA, Norway, Singapore, and South Korea, which constitute about 65% of FDI inflows. But let me share another information. During the last 2 years, in fact, it is not US or UK who put the most FDI in Bangladesh. It is China who invested the most in Bangladesh in terms of foreign direct investment. Now, COVID-19 challenges that renewed emphasis on FDI by Bangladesh policymakers. Economic downfall from COVID-19 poses multidimensional challenges for Bangladesh as well as the other parts of the world. The world, as well as Bangladesh's major export markets, the US, the Eurozone, are all expected to have economic contraction in the coming years, while Bangladesh's own growth was to fall to that of 3%. These unforeseen turns also come at a time when there was a consensus among government and private sector that private investment growth has been sluggish and that there exists significant room to enhance flow of FDI in Bangladesh. Notwithstanding the outlook, there does exist a strong silver lining which could help secure significant and sustained flow of high quality FDI in Bangladesh over the long term. Increasing cost and massive disruption in global supply chain have created prospects of shifts in global supply chain, whereby investors who have large manufacturing investment in East Asia are likely to expand their production networks beyond the region to countries in Southeast Asia and South Asia. These investors, primarily from Japan, China, Singapore, South Korea, European Union, and USA, are already studying potential options for relocation, and some have even announced incentive for their companies to relocate. And one of the destination is definitely Bangladesh. To successfully capitalizing on these emerging advantages, the policymakers are putting in place a holistic effort, integrating targeted investment promotion strategy, rapid improvement in policy and regulatory environment that govern the investment climate, and strengthening the institutional capabilities to respond to investor needs, both with regard to timely policy response and investor facilitation. In light of this, hence it is imperative for Bangladesh government, particularly Bangladesh Investment Development Authority, BIDA, to prepare and position Bangladesh as a strong candidate for hosting the investors. In light of this, BIDA is preparing targeted, time-bound, and focused investment promotion plan that will help identification and targeting of the investor group, outreach with Bangladesh's value proposition, making rapid, sustainable improvement in its investment climate to allay concern of the targeted investor group, and putting in place an effective investor facilitation and aftercare process. Today's meeting to reach out to investors from East Asian countries is an important part of that effort. Given the urgency to move fast, competition Bangladesh will come across and lead to tailoring value proposition to specific set of country investors. Bangladesh must prioritize investment opportunities, be clear of its competitive strength, and set its sight firmly on countries relevant to the emerging opportunities. These efforts, hence, will be very specific and will focus on benchmarking of sectors to identify focus sectors or sector of interest by the target group for attracting FDI, including new sectors with potential for growth in the context of COVID-19 disruption, profiling industrial infrastructure in the focus sectors and potential location for new investment, identification of an outreach to target countries based on focus sector, FDI chains, expansion beyond East Asia, and past arrangement with Bangladesh. At this point, I would like to refer to some of the specific reference about investor experience in Bangladesh. Bangladesh has a proven track record of being able to build global scale manufacturing with quality and in line with global compliance standard and still be price competitive. You all know about Bangladesh's garments industries, pharmaceuticals, ceramics, leather and leather goods. Bangladeshi industries is nimble and agile and very good at overcoming resource constraints, working with less and don't have heavy legacy technology issues. Bangladesh offers duty and quota-free access to more than 3 billion people in the world. Let me also share with you the latest decision taken by China. As perhaps all of you know that China last week decided to give Bangladesh 97% of the Bangladeshi product access to China duty-free. I believe that this is not only important in terms of trade, but this in terms of investment in Bangladesh is very important. Definitely some of our foreign investors will look into this opportunity to invest in Bangladesh and export their products to the Chinese market duty-free in excess of other countries who offers duty-free and quota-free access to their country. We have a super geographical and demographic advantage, which potentially gives us great access to the global market, as well as giving investors immediate access to 170 million strong domestic market, of whom at least 20 to 30 million have significant disposable income. All these are a rare combination. Below are some examples where foreign investors have their best operating units in Bangladesh. Of course, Bangladesh has one of its top 5 factories in the world in Bangladesh, with more than 140 factories worldwide. BAT Bangladesh is a role model and one of the highest productivity in the world. Is sending production staff to Poland to train other BAT staff. Other than these two, there are others good companies like Unilever, Standard Chartered Bank, Citibank, HSBC, Nestle, Coca-Cola, Pepsi-Cola, GE, the Western hotel chain. All these are glaring instances of foreign investment in Bangladesh. Marico Bangladesh is one of the highest return on investment in the world. For them comes from Bangladesh. There are several domestic billion-dollar conglomerates like Square, Brand, etc. Bikash has grown to be the largest MFI in the world in the blink of an eye, with a valuation of close to $2 billion US already. Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation are invested as other American companies. Finally, Bangladesh has a robust public-private partnership framework and ever-expanding pipeline of projects. We would like to better understand whether the foreign investors who we are meeting today will be willing to explore the possibility of public-private partnership with Bangladesh for developing economic and social infrastructure projects. We know there are pain points. We have identified the principal ones. Please also feel free to tell us on an ongoing basis what are the impediments which stop you from coming to Bangladesh. Government of Bangladesh is represented here at a very high level. We hear you, and even at enterprise level, government and chambers will address your problems. We are already working on banking, foreign exchange, insolvency, customs, and several other regulatory reforms, not just the World Bank's esoteric list of ease of doing business indicators. In fact, we are working at a larger scale. So we promise they will be fixed. So I believe that as Dr. Masroor Riaz and Barrister Nihat Kabir mentioned, this is the beginning. We will definitely be engaged further. And I would like to assure you that in future we will be engaged with the country-specific investors. And we have already had a plan to engage with investors from Singapore next month. And in terms of, we will be engaging with other countries also. Thank you. I would like to stop here. And basically, we want to hear from you. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Executive Chairman, for your very clear messages in terms of priorities that Bangladesh plays on FDI, as well as high priority that Bangladesh attaches to investment potential from East Asia, as well as BIDA and the GOB, the government of Bangladesh's holistic efforts regarding this. So we will soon move to the open session, which will be moderated by Asif Ibrahim, who's a steering committee member of Resurgent Bangladesh, but he's a large exporter in the ready-made garment and textile sector, but is also the chairman of the Chittagong Stock Exchange and a director of the largest sector association of the country, the Bangladesh Garment Manufacturer and Exporter Association. But before Asif Bhai takes over, I just wanted to share some numbers with you that we have in this meeting. From Bangladesh Investment Development Authority, we have executive chairman, but we also have 2 executive members of the board, as well as 3 directors who have joined this meeting. So BIDA is here in full force. From Japan, we have 4 distinguished participants, actually 5. I think there are, I think 1 additional guest we have from JETRO. So there are 3 entrepreneurs or enterprises, as well as 2 from the government of Japan. From Singapore, we have 7 participants. There are 3 private sector entrepreneurs / officials, and then there are 4 from government of Singapore representing Enterprise Singapore, as well as Ministry of Trade and Industries. And from China, we have 3 companies present here, represented by 7 investors and officials. With that, and we also have Ifti Islam, who's a partner, managing partner of the Asian Tiger Capital, but who's also been instrumental in establishing the strategic partnership between Shanghai Stock Exchange and in its investment in Dhaka Stock Exchange that took place about 2 years ago, and who's working very closely with a number of Chinese investment agencies as well as investors. With that, let me hand it over to Mr. Asif Ibrahim. Asif Bhai, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Masroor Riaz. A very warm welcome to the Executive Chairman of BIDA, the members of BIDA, and particularly the investors from the region. This meeting is basically for you, and we are extremely grateful that you've taken your time out. I know all of us are in different time zones, but we are extremely grateful that you've been able to join with us in this very important discussion. The Executive Chairman of BIDA has already set the tone in terms of how Bangladesh is looking forward to getting foreign direct investment, particularly from the perspective that the special economic zones that are coming up, those would be very well equipped, and they would be absolutely ripe for attracting investments at this moment. The GDP growth he mentioned, averaging 7% from 2010 till now, is very, very good. And of course, you all know about the demographic dividend and the labor force that we have. Those were all mentioned by him in his speech. Now, before I go into the open discussion, I would like to basically talk about the key focus areas which we will talk about from your perspective. We want to know what you're thinking. And the first is the latest on the developments from your countries, from East Asian countries, about your possible investment in South Asia, particularly in Bangladesh. And the second is how you view the prospect of investments in Bangladesh based upon what the executive chairman has said in his speech, and then what Bangladesh needs to do better in order for us to make it easier for you to make your investment in our country, and then how BIDA can reach out more effectively to the investors, to you, from Japan, Singapore, and China who are present here, and what next steps you would like to see us do in order for this investments to be facilitated. So those are the key 5 areas that we wish to talk about. And to talk about these key areas, I would first like to invite Endo-san of JETRO. Endo-san, over to you. I would give, let's limit it to 5 minutes, if that's okay with you, sir. Over to you, Endo-san from JETRO.
Hello, this is Ando from JETRO. Thank you very much for inviting us to this great opportunities. Regarding the potential sectors in Bangladesh, I would like to mention the automotive sectors and ICT sectors. Especially automotive sectors can create the huge amount of the jobs, and the supporting industry can follow the automotive sectors. So in this regard, the Bangladesh has a huge populations, so automotive sector is the really potential industries. But one point I would like to mention is that Bangladesh government has to prepare the good environment for the business environment for automotive sectors, especially now according to the Honda, one of the biggest two-wheelers the manufacturers, the Bangladesh sales volume, annual sales volume is 5 lakh. But due to the COVID-19 situations, this sales volume can decrease by 30 to 40% this year. So one of the possible measurement is that to decrease the registration fees in Bangladesh, it will contribute to the expanding the consumption in Bangladesh. And once the market expands, the supporting industries can come and can make investment in Bangladesh. So this is number one. And number two is ICT sectors. As you know, the Bangladesh government has a very great initiative for digital Bangladesh. And many Japanese companies are focusing on these strategies. And many Japanese companies are looking for the great destinations to outsource the software and the website development. And Bangladesh is, of course, one of the greatest destinations. And we JETRO also promote the Bangladesh in terms of the good destinations for ICT sectors. And ICT sectors does not have any negative impact from COVID-19 because, as you know, ICT sectors, how to say, does not choose a place to operate. So, including the governmental sectors, we have how to say, the very challenges to work remotely, but ICT sectors has no challenges in this. So we can say the ICT sector is the very promising sectors in Bangladesh. So that is, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ando-san from JETRO, for giving you the perspective. Yes, we very much welcome the investment of Honda in, I believe it's in the Abdul Monem Economic Zone. So this is a good start. And of course, we wish to see more and more such investments coming in the future. You mentioned about ICT and the possibilities of collaboration. I also strongly believe with you that that is an area that can be we can focus. As a matter of fact, we have been discussing this with the BIDA executive chairman, and we have also identified it as a very strategic area where we can focus going forward. Thank you very much for your very valuable inputs. I would now like to request from Enterprise Singapore, Sabrina Ho, to give her perspectives regarding the 5 points that I mentioned in the beginning, the areas of focus. How do you perceive Bangladesh to be investment destination for Singapore, from Singapore government's perspective, as well as from the private sector's perspective? Thank you. Over to you, Sabrina.
Thank you, Ashraf. I'll try my best to answer all 5 areas. I think what I can probably share is a bit of a background on the Singapore company's interests in Bangladesh to date, as well as some of the new areas that we see emerging as a result of the current COVID situation. So I think to begin with, Singapore has been a long-time investor in Bangladesh, particularly in the infrastructure sector and the power sector. In the last couple of years, we have seen some degrees of diversification in terms of the interests, going into still an infrastructure area, but looking into the ports and logistics sector. as well as into the consumer industry. And I think what we are trying to monitor and trying to also understand is, in light of the current situation and I think the budget that was announced last week, we understand that there is some impact on the infrastructure developments and infrastructure financing for these large projects. Again, I think many of the Singapore investments going to Bangladesh take a very long-term perspective. So even if I talk about the consumer sector, companies like Wilmar have invested in the Misrai SEZ. So I think understanding the impact on the logistics and connectivity plans, especially if there's certain adjustments to that timeline, is very important for investors. I think investors are understanding of the situation, but it's important for them to also then adjust their timeline and implementation operations plan. So I think that's one. In terms of new areas that I think have emerged over the last couple of months with Bangladesh, I would say is in the digital sector. I agree very much with what Ando-san shared from Jetro earlier. We are seeing particularly companies in that industry being much more nimble, being a bit more asset light as well. Plus, with the current situation where many of us continue to work from home, the need for some degree of automation, especially in a lot of the operations process, is necessary. So we're actually quite interested to hear how either the Bangladesh government or the private sector is responding towards this. Are we seeing a bigger trend towards investment in automation technologies too? Related to that then is also the startups aspect. We prior to the COVID situation, we were in initial conversations with BIDA as well to look at how we can foster a stronger collaboration between the startup ecosystem in Singapore and with Bangladesh too. So we continue to be interested to explore that opportunity. We see some early successes previously. I think there was a Bangladeshi startup in the water treatment sector that actually won startup challenge in Singapore as well. And that led to actually private sector partnerships on that front. So we are very keen to look at opportunities in the startup sector, as well as how we can facilitate such kind of partnerships. The last part I would say is arising a bit more as a need from Singapore as well. We recognize through the last couple of months, there's a need to also diversify our supply sources for both food supply, as well as medical supplies. So on that front, we have started some conversations with the private sector, but I'm actually also curious to understand how BIDA or the related government agencies can work with us to identify some of these new potential trade flows. Singapore being a global trading hub, I think we want to look beyond just Singapore's needs, but also how we can work with Bangladesh on these export opportunities to the region as well. So I think that's, I hope covers the 5 different areas in a slightly different manner. Yeah, I think that's from me for now. I believe some of our companies may have some follow-up questions as well, which maybe we can highlight later.
Certainly, but may I ask you, Sabrina, I mean, how can BIDA reach out more effectively to investors in Singapore? I mean, do you think we are doing enough, or we need to do more strategically? How do we need to place ourselves? I mean, I'm sure you deal with investors from many different countries. How do you see whether our approach is different from them, or are we in the right track? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I think if I can draw some comparison with what we are seeing, for example, in India, you were asking about what Singapore's interest in the South Asia region is. I think definitely in the areas of manufacturing, we are trying to understand how the global value chains are shifting and what is South Asia's role in this. Of course, I think India comes to mind for many people, but I think in certain niche areas in particular, Bangladesh does stand out clearly as well. So I think where maybe BIDA can maybe step up on that front is to more clearly articulate industry, sector-specific role that Bangladesh can, that the current ecosystem can play, but also where there's certain policies and plans that Bangladesh as a whole economy is planning towards. So we can also then better inform the Singapore companies why they should consider Bangladesh in their long-term plans too.
Are there any particular specific cases where investors from Singapore has had some issues? If there are any such examples, perhaps you can also talk about that. We are having very open discussion. There is no, we can discuss very openly. If there are any companies in Singapore who faced any issues or problems in terms of getting their investments in Bangladesh.
I wouldn't say there are any issues that are unique to Bangladesh. I think the issues that our investors face are quite common actually in many countries. I think the difference is how these issues are handled. So I think where we have seen much more progress in terms of recent investments are countries, or at least at project levels where there are specific platforms for these issues to be quickly addressed, quickly discussed. I think the key is really time, right? The longer it takes to resolve an issue, it weakens the investor confidence as well. So again, I don't think it's the existing policies or the market that's any less interesting. I think it's the speed of how fast these issues can be resolved.
Our policies are very friendly and we are quite open for attracting FDIs, but you're very right. We must speed ourselves up from our end also. Thank you very much, Sabrina, for your perspectives. At this particular point, I would like to bring in Ifti Islam, who's the chairman of Asian Tiger Capital. Dr. Masroor mentioned a little bit about him. Ifti is also advisor on the Shenzhen Shanghai Stock Exchange investment as the strategic partner in Dhaka Stock Exchange and involved in facilitating BRI projects and investments from China to Bangladesh. I would request Ifti to kindly also introduce the 3 Chinese investors that we have present in the meeting and moderate this part of the discussion with the Chinese investors. While we are at it, I also have a personal agenda, which is that 25% stake of Chittagong Stock Exchange is up for sale. We are looking for a strategic investor. So if anybody is interested to invest in 25% stake in Chittagong Stock Exchange, kindly contact me. So over to you, Ifti. Ifti, can you hear me?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes.
Great.
Please go.
I'm calling in from London with a little bit of a cold, so bear with me. As far as China is concerned, I think, as the expression goes, we live in interesting times. Let me make a quick comment to put the China engagement into context, and then I'll introduce the three distinguished companies from China. We have 2 state-owned infrastructure and construction companies and 1 technology company. So we have 3 companies today: Gezugo, Kodik, and Kingdom International. And I think that gives a broad range of opinions. Before I do that, let me, as I said, give a little bit of context. As the Chinese expression goes, we live in interesting times. This is an unprecedented shock to the global economy and to Bangladesh's economy. And I think I appreciate and applaud BIDA and your group's initiative here, because I think that FDI is going to be mission critical restarting Bangladesh's economy, and I think closer collaboration is important to avoid deglobalization and the collapse in trade and cross-border flows we're currently seeing. As far as China is concerned, I think there are maybe three things that we can focus on and get some comments from our Chinese friends. Firstly, we can think about how BRI will look after the COVID crisis, both in Bangladesh and more broadly. Secondly, we can think a little bit about the factory relocation. And my friend from Singapore mentioned global supply chains being disrupted. What will that look like, and what does it mean for Bangladesh's investment? And thirdly, I wanted to talk, particularly since we have a very distinguished technology specialist from China, Mr. Ling, about how COVID is going to create new opportunities in the digital economy, both globally and for Bangladesh. So on BRI, again, in the interest of time, I'll be very brief. I think that there's a lot of skepticism about whether BRI will survive this COVID crisis. I'm quite optimistic, and I think that the Belt Road Initiative is maybe different, but there'll be new opportunities. There'll need to be some reassessment of existing projects. But there are three main components of BRI: a trade corridor, a financial corridor, and the DSCD was part of the financial corridor, and a technology Silk Road, you could say. And now there's a fourth Silk Road, the health Silk Road. So I think that we have some comments. We have some comments on the infrastructure. The trade side is being catalyzed by the recently concluded trade agreement between China and Bangladesh for tariff-free access. That is going to be very significant in terms of persuading international companies that want to export to China to use Bangladesh as a base, and of course Chinese companies even to relocate to Bangladesh as a low-cost base to export to China. The second thing is on the on the factory relocation, and I think that it's important that BIDA and the Bangladesh private sector also engage with Chinese companies who may well want to use Bangladesh as a base to avoid future tariffs that may be imposed on China, as well as for some of the low-cost reasons. So I think that China can be an integral part of the relocation of global supply chains. Obviously, China has extensive experience in manufacturing across all these supply chains, and would see Bangladesh as a natural partner. And thirdly, on the digital economy, I think that that's probably I think as my esteemed friend from Japan, Jetro was mentioning, ICT is the sector that clearly has been the biggest beneficiary during COVID. Bangladesh already has under the Honorable Prime Minister, a Digital Bangladesh initiative. And I think close collaboration with Chinese technology companies, such as Kingdom International, Mr. Ling, the CEO, is on the call, I think will create lots of new mutually beneficial opportunities between China and Bangladesh. And the last thing I wanted to say before bringing in the Chinese companies is that it's not, I think when Bangladesh engages with China, I think that there's a lot of geopolitical noise that comes into it. But I think that this engagement between Bangladesh and China can be a multilateral, or can be a collaboration that benefits different countries, Japan, Singapore, and others who are on the call. So I don't see this as being a sort of geopolitical zero-sum situation. So we have to find all countries in the region are facing, as I used at the beginning of this call, unprecedented economic shocks. So all countries have an interest to find new sources of growth, new sources of economic opportunity that are mutually beneficial. And I hope that the engagement with China can facilitate that. With that, let me now, as I said, we have three distinguished speakers. Mr. Zhang Bo from Gazuba, Mr. Yu from Codic, and Mr. Ling, who's from Kingdom International. Gazubo is a state construction company, and as I said, Codic is a state, again, infrastructure company, and Kingdom is digital. So, Mr. Zhangbo, let me ask you to make any comments or any observations, particularly on what you think about the investment opportunity of Bangladesh, and also if there's anything specifically BIDA or this group can do to facilitate more investments from your company from China into Bangladesh. Across to you, Mr. Zhangbo.
You are on mute.
Sorry, I was on mute, but Mr. Zhangbo, is your microphone on mute? I can't hear you. No? Okay, we can come.
No,
Toby,
I think he's trying to speak, but he's on mute. Mr. Bo, you have to unmute yourself.
Toby, maybe you could ask.
Yeah. Now it's okay?
It's okay. Yes, now it's okay. Yes. Right.
It's okay now.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, thank you. So, I'm Mr. Long Guobin from China Gazoba, and thank you very much for this meeting organized by BIDA. And I think for the first, the possible investment from China Gazoba, we are interested in the infrastructure and the power sector. Like the PPP road, we are following the Dhaka Chittagong PPP road, but we hear it's going to be delayed for a long time. So we're looking for a second target, but we're very interested to work for PPP road in Bangladesh. And for the renewable energy, we already participating in 200 or 300 megawatt solar power plant, and we are negotiating with the BIDA for the land. And for transmission line, we got some information. Bangladesh is going to have the PPP model for transmission line projects. So also we are very, very interested in this sector. And also we're interested in the water treatment plants and the economic zone and environment protection projects. And also, as Mr. FT mentioned, we are now promoting the third country partnership. We want to jointly working with other countries like Japan, or Singapore, Korea. Yeah, and recently we are very close to Marubeni, and we have established a new system to collecting with Marubeni all over the world. And we have also discussed with Marubeni Bangladesh for jointly work in the PPP sector in Bangladesh, such as the road sector or power or others. But we're in a very early stage. And also recently we have had several meetings with JETRO and Mr. Hero from China, JETRO in China. And also he agreed with us to promote more collection between China Gazoba and Japanese companies. So by using this good chance, also I want to open to our distinguished guests. We are very open to work you together in the Bangladesh for investments like a PPP model or other. And I think our concern, like for the renewable energy sector, like especially the solar power plant investment, we need to secure the land first. So always land is a headache, and also we need good local partner who can secure land and local certifications for us. And we're very interested to invest if these local facilities are available. And if it's possible, I think BIDA maybe can recommend some reliable local companies to us so we can discuss and agree. And also in this platform of BIDA, if it's possible, we can have a next step. You can join us with Singapore, Japan together for some special sector or special project. I think that's all my speech now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Zhangbo. I think all of that was a very detailed and very, I think, specific and to the point comments. Very, very helpful. And on renewable energy, Bangladesh has just moved forward with a 35 megawatt power plant, which also involved both ADB and also Chinese construction company. Let me move on to Mr. Yu of CODIC, if we would like to hear your valuable comments. Yeah, we can see you now.
All right. Okay. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is Yang from CODIC, and thank you very much for this chance to talk with all of you to share our opinion to do some things in Bangladesh market. As we can observe that CODIC is China Overseas Infrastructure Development and Investment Corporation, which is a project developer in the region. Significant infrastructure investments are needed for the Bangladesh to achieve the sustainable development goals. It is a tremendous gap between investment requirements and actual current investment in Bangladesh. To close it, both public and private finance sources are required in reality. However, many infrastructure projects cannot be linked to finance due to a number of reasons, such as a lack of bankability, insufficient project development, and high risk at the early stage of project development. This is why project preparation is key to making projects investment ready. To answer such questions, CODIC was set up for the project preparation in a number of regions, including Bangladesh. Now we have developed sophisticated approaches addressing all relevant phases of the project preparation process. Emphasis on project prioritization ensures sufficient and effective employment of the PPPF's financial and human resources. So basically, we are focusing on the project development in the area of infrastructure such as ICT, power, and transportation and the industrial park. What we are doing now is to do some engineering preparation like technical and economic feasibility assessment of the project, to do some financing preparation like commencement of implementation with financial institutions who is willing to provide debt finance to the project, and to do some legal preparation like to finalize the legal document like PPP agreement or the concession agreement with the government, and to ensure the EPC protocol and operational management agreement with third-party service provider. And we are also the long-term investor to take control of the project. So that's what we do for the most of our hosting countries. So this is what we can do for region. And for the specific topic. In Bangladesh region, we can do that. Previously, we were engaging in several power projects with some private investor who were trying to get projects successfully financed by the international financial institutions like ADB or some Chinese financial institutions like Exim Banks or CDB. And we are following up several solar and wind projects near Chittagong and Dhaka. This is what we are doing now in Bangladesh, and we are quite happy to work with all of you to talk about the further cooperation with some potential investors and potential project in terms of project preparation, which means premature stage project. This is what we can do for this country and to link the project to the financial area. This is, I think this is our role in this market, and this is what we think is important to the successful project implementation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Yu. That's very helpful, and I think it's very, I think it's very important, your role in terms of project preparation and project structuring, project financing, and bankability to make sure that projects actually move forward. Let me now move on to Mr. Ling, the CEO of Kingdom International. And Mr. Ling, I think we would love to get your comments on the digital economy opportunities. And also, I would mention Mr. Ling has a lot of expertise and background in digital healthcare with United Imaging, which is a Shanghai-based healthcare company. I think that as I mentioned before, the Health Silk Road is very, very important, and would love to get your thoughts on that. As we were on this call, I saw a message that the Bangladesh Army is setting up hospitals across Bangladesh and looking for JV partners in the region. So across to you, Mr. Ling. Hello, Mr. Ling.
If we can't get Mr. Ling, maybe we can, for saving time, we can perhaps get back to him. Why don't you get in touch with him and tell him that we're going to come back to him. Okay. Meanwhile, we also have other investors who are present here. Let's go back again to some of the esteemed investors from Japan. This is an open floor. So anybody from Japan who would want to discuss about any particular issues regarding their investments in Bangladesh, please go ahead and introduce yourself and speak.
Okay, so this is Shariful Alam. I head the Mitsui Bangladesh operation, and I am also Vice President of Japan Bangladesh Chamber of Commerce. So please allow me to speak a little. Firstly, the Honorable Executive Chairman of BIDA and all the distinguished guests. From Japan side, we really appreciate the way it has been conducted, and Resurgent Bangladesh has taken initiative, especially under the leadership of Madam President Nihat Kobir. I will first speak a little bit about the difficulties or challenges we face between the investment from Japan to Bangladesh. So firstly, I have been always saying the same thing is the connectivity. Japan, Bangladesh, we don't have any direct flight. Whereas, with China or Singapore, we have direct flight. So that really helps the investment bringing to Bangladesh. Since we don't have direct flight with Japan, this is actually a big challenge. And I know that Bangladesh Viman has been trying to launch a flight from Japan to from Bangladesh to Japan. But at the same time, the challenge remains because the ranking of Bangladesh Biman is not really very high. So many of the Japanese companies executives will not be able to travel through Bangladesh Biman. So connectivity is one of the major problems we face. And I'm sure that BIDA has been aggressively working on improving ease of doing business index. But I also would like to appeal to BIDA Honorable Chairman that please also look at the global competitive index. Bangladesh, we always say we are very competitive because our lower cost of production. But in fact, on overall basis, we are not really competitive. Our index is much lower than ASEAN countries or neighboring countries like India.
Mr. Sharif, if I may ask you to kindly, we all know about these broader issues that you're discussing, and we are addressing that. Do we have any specific projects through JBCCI which are being routed through your chamber, are facing difficulties? Can we talk about any such investment opportunities or projects?
I think for the projects which Amdo-san has already said, one of the area is automotive. And if you may allow to little bit speak about the automotive sector, as Amdo-san said, that Bangladesh government is also very interested for developing automotive sector, and the automotive policy is being framed up now. But if we look at the market, the automotive market, like four-wheeler passenger car market, we have only 30,000 to 40,000 units sales per annum. But if we want to set up a factory in Bangladesh to achieve economies of scale, the quantity has to be like 100,000 units. So the government should look at the area that how the policy should be framed up in a way so that the market is grown up. Even though the GDP per capita of Pakistan or other countries is lower than Bangladesh, but the automotive market over there is much bigger. So this is one of the area. The other area is as Mitsui, we have been basically trying to invest in two major sectors. One is infrastructure. So one of the gas-based power plant, we are making joint venture with Coal Power Bangladesh in Matarbari, 630 megawatt. It's going on, and the problems, whatever we have been facing, we have been in touch with BIDA all the time. Also, Mitsui as a company is interested not only in the infrastructure, but also in the consumer market. And we talk about the relocation of Japanese companies from China to Bangladesh. We have to understand that China is a big market. So the companies which are focusing on Chinese domestic market, they are not going to relocate. But if they are focusing on the export market, they probably will be interested in relocation.
Thank you. Mr. Sharif, regarding that Matawari project,
yes,
that you're approaching BIDA if whenever you're facing issues. Are those issues being resolved?
Yes, some issues are being resolved, and also Japan and Bangladesh, we have public-private economic dialogue. Over there, we also discuss the issues which are challenges, and which are the solutions we need.
Thank you so very much, Mr. Sharif. Thank you for joining us, for giving your perspective. Are there any other investors from Japan who would like to speak? June, would you like to say something?
Yes, thank you so much. Yeah, from the investor perspective, as we have been working on this investment policy promotion and all those from JBCCI, right now we have about 310 Japanese companies, and we believe that next year when the Arai Hazar Economic Zone, which is jointly developed by BEZA and Sumitomo. When it will be ready for plot allocation, we are hoping that there will be quite a lot of Japanese companies that are going to come. So, you know, one of the things that is very important, our the Japanese ambassador always talks about it, is the companies that has already invested in Bangladesh. So, you know, the problems that they are facing, we need to solve those as soon as possible. Alon Bhai has mentioned that there is PPED, the Public-Private Economic Dialogue. We go ahead and post those issues there. And a lot of them, we are very happy that a lot of those things are getting resolved. Some of the stickier ones are with NBR, Bangladesh Bank. We are talking about those also. So we would hope that you know, the one-stop shop, one-stop service that BIDA is working on, BESA is working on, those become you know, a little bit more efficient in terms of some of those problem solving. That will be very helpful for us, we believe. So these are kind of like some basic comments that I'm throwing based on what we have been seeing. Very specific information about Honda has been discussed here. We would hope that something would happen, because those kind of big investments, if they're very successful, then we will get a lot of other bigger investments. But once again, I would like to thank Resurgent Bangladesh for, you know, bringing all these countries together to talk about this openly, so that we can think about more collaboration and other things.
Thank you, Mr. Weir. Thank you. Thank you very much for your perspective. We would like to move on to Singapore now. Are there any other investors from Singapore who wish to speak? Singapore? Okay. Since there is no response from Singapore, can we go back to Mr. Ling? Were you able to get in touch with him?
Yes, they tell me that there was Mike. Let me try again. They said that they're both there. Mr. Ling or Toby?
Yes,
yeah,
can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Hello.
Go ahead. Yep, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Ifti, and thank you very much to Mr. Chairman. Well, Kingdom has been already engaged in Bangladesh stock exchange, so we are very much committed to the digital upgradation or digitalization upgradation in Bangladesh. There's one thing I would like to share at this COVID-19 pandemic situation. We have a very interesting finding in China, because most of the sector has been affected in the downwards, but the digital economy sector has been upwards in the last several months. So I think probably it's time to look into the digital economy opportunity for future proven upgradations. And this is the area we are very much looking to, that future opportunities in Bangladesh. This is a brief sharing, and we'll find out, you know, just a couple of days ago, we call 18th of June, one single day, the purchase in one day is over 1 trillion RMB. So even there is a very big impact by the COVID-19 pandemic, but the economy online is still very active and very promising. And I believe maybe it's time to look into this area also in Bangladesh. So this is the message I would like to address, and we will very much look into this area in depth together with BIDA.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Ling. I just wanted to add to that Alibaba obviously has made a very high profile and financial investment into Bcash, and also we have direct investment into Duraz. But I think Bangladesh is still not seeing the kind of scale of cross-border digital investment that India has seen. So I think there's still a big opportunity. Let me hand it back to you now, Sif.
Thank you very much. I see Mr. Wong Ping of PSA. Are you trying to say something, Mr. Ping?
Hi, yes, thank you, Asif. Sorry, just now when you asked for comments from the Singapore private sector, I was having a bit of a technical difficulty, but okay, anyway, thanks for looping back. I would say that PSA has been actively engaging with the government of Bangladesh together with our Enterprise Singapore and also BIDA. And while we have not have a big project that has been launched yet, we are already working towards one of the major port projects in the country that's called the Bay Terminal. And I think the journey up till now has been pretty positive. I think we have got good collaboration with BPPA, with Ministry of Shipping, with CPA. So I'm not really going to highlight any issues really on an investment, but I thought that as we walk this journey, we start to see that there are a lot of issues that will be inter-government ministry and inter-government agency. So it's more than just the shipping ministry. There will be like the road and railways, there will be the customs, MBR, there will be the Ministry of Finance for regulations and tariffs and such. So this is something that as I hear the feedback from our friends in Japan, from our friends in China, I think we would like to, of course, look to BIDA for your support as well to help us along this journey. Let's say if that in the course of like the need for having coordination across ministries for a very positive discussion to resolve many of the things that need to be put in place for a project to go through. Because I mean, for a port to be in place that will support all the economic zones and the trade and logistics, I think there also needs to be the road connectivity, rail connectivities, there need to be the tariffs and the regulations and such. So we are looking forward to this journey, and I just like to express some hope and also appreciation. I think that we look forward to cooperation with you. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Ping. We have heard the perspectives from the investors. We would wish to go back to BIDA, but after BIDA's response, we would also like to hear some of the responses from the private sector of Bangladesh. I wish to acknowledge the presence of Mr. Abul Qasim Khan, Chairman of Business Initiative Leading Development and former President, Dhaka Chamber of Commerce. Also, Mr. Said Naseem Manzoor, former President, Metropolitan Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and former Chairman of Business Initiative Leading Development. And also Mr. Shams Mahmood, who's the current President of Dhaka Chamber of Commerce and Industry. But before hearing their perspectives on what has been discussed so far, I would like to now hand back to the Executive Chairman of BIDA to give his reactions to what he has heard from the investors. So over to you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Asif, and thanks to all the participants from overseas who spoke on different sectors and on different issues. Let me start with the remarks made by Mr. Anderson from JETRO. Yes, I know that Japan is very interested about the automotive sector, and it's already been discussed that Bangladesh government is also very keen about this promotion of automotive sector. And as you know, that there was no automotive policy in the country. So this is for the first time that government is in fact preparing automotive policy, and that is really essential for a sector to thrive. And what I believe, and we are dealing with this automotive sector, it is not only the demand of the vehicles or cars or trucks or bus in the local market, and there is scope for in different aspects of automotive sector, like the parts of automotive sectors, different parts and backward linkages in the automotive sector that can grow in this market, and that can also be exported if we can do that. For example, if you want to build a plane, you don't necessarily build all the parts of the plane in a single plant. But it can be in different parts of the country, and it can also be outside the country. So I don't believe that this should be localized in the local market only. It can the automotive sector, the company who are interested, they can also think of exporting the automotive outside the country. Definitely from BIDA, we will try, as you propose. Yes, the registration fee is a bit higher in the country, and the registration fee, particularly, it is I believe is to discourage the importation of second-hand car. In fact, that's why the registration fee is too high. But we are working, and we are asking the government to reduce the registration fee. ICT is definitely the most promising or potential sector in Bangladesh. You know the slogan of Digital Bangladesh. When our present Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina came into power back in 2009, she declared the vision for Digital Bangladesh by 2021. And at that time, people used to laugh, and some used to criticize the concept of Digital Bangladesh. But now you see, this is the reality. This is how we are getting together today through this digital technology. And I believe Mr. Anderson very rightly mentioned that, yes, ICT is the next potential for Bangladesh. And Bangladesh is ready to welcome any investment on ICT. You know that there are 28 high-tech park and high-tech and software park are being constructed throughout the country, and some of them are ready for investment. So you are most welcome to invest in the ICT sector. Although there is a separate authority for high-tech park, but I can assure from BIDA that you can start with BIDA. BIDA will do the initial part, and so long you are not engaged with the high-tech park authority, we'll do everything you need to invest in the ICT sector. Okay. Then Ms. Sabrina Ho, she talked about the Singapore perspective, and Singapore is already in investment on power sector, infrastructure, logistics, consumer. Yes, I think that other than power sector, there is a potential in all other sector. Power sector is a little bit for this moment saturated, but the investment that is now being in the pipeline, definitely if you feel or if you face any problem, BIDA is always there to help you out, to facilitate, to coordinate with other government agencies, whatever. But the Singapore companies are most welcome for infrastructure, logistics, consumer goods, etc. And BIDA will be more than happy to provide support to the companies. Okay. And also the ICT sector startups. This is very important. The startups. Yeah, there are many new entrepreneurs are coming up in Bangladesh. You know, Bangladesh has the most young population here, and this population are very innovative, and they are tech heavy, and they are going for new startups. They think out of the box, and they are coming up with new projects. If you are interested, I believe that Singapore companies are interested in the startups, and there is good opportunity here, and BIDA will be always with your side to provide any support you need. SME, food supply, medical supply, and beyond, yes, all these are very lucrative sector. Okay. I'm happy that you did not raise any specific problem. So my open assurance to you, any specific problem you face in investing or in carrying out your investment in Bangladesh, please come to BIDA. BIDA will be always on your side. Mr. Ibn Islam, he talked about Bangladesh potential, yes, and he also raised how Bangladesh deals the COVID situation and the post-COVID. Bangladesh is trying its best to manage the COVID situation as it is throughout the world. You know, that the Bangladesh government is trying its best. And we talked about the factory location, new opportunities created by COVID. This pandemic, in fact, opens the eye of all the governments across the world that you need to think about your health system. It is not only in Bangladesh. Definitely, Bangladesh is not in a very good shape, not a very good situation so far this healthcare is concerned. But definitely, we need to emphasize on health sector. And we have already received one public-private partnership proposal from China for health sector development. This is under consideration, and definitely we encourage our Chinese private sector investor to come to Bangladesh and to invest in health sector, because health sector is very profitable, I believe, in Bangladesh. And the factory location, as I mentioned, the 97% duty-free access to Chinese market. It is not necessarily the Chinese companies will be coming up. There can be joint venture. There can be investment from any other country, from Singapore, from Japan, Korea, or any other country. You can invest in here, and you can export to China, as because it is duty-free, like the Eurozone countries. And also some of the Chinese investors spoke. Mr. Jain Hu, perhaps, I don't know whether I could pronounce the name correct. You are working on PPP for wood construction, ICT, renewable energy, transmission line. This is one subsector I would like to mention. So far, government was not interested in privatizing the transmission and distribution, but lately this is being discussed, and I think we need huge investment in electricity transmission, because we are now surplus in electricity generation, but still we are facing some problem at the end user level for quality uninterrupted electricity supply. the problem lies in transmission and distribution. So yes, there can be big investment in public-private partnership in transmission. This is the sector I would rather request you to come up with big investment. And you talked about water treatment plan, like to work in with other countries. This is really, really very good. I appreciate this approach that our Chinese investors, they want to work with Japanese investors. They have already started working with Marubeni, who are already in Bangladesh. And there can be joint venture with Singapore companies, the South Korean companies, Japanese companies, maybe companies from other countries also. This is a very, I think this is a very positive spirit for working together and investing in Bangladesh. Secured land for solar panel. This is a real sort of what should I say? It's not a problem, rather it's a sort of restrictive areas that in terms of land availability for solar panel. Lately, what we found, we have some state-owned enterprises who has land, and some of the Saudi investors, they found some land in the sugar mills owned by the Ministry of Industries. And we can, if you like, we can try for you also whether we can find some other state-owned enterprise unused land for this solar panel. Definitely, BIDA will try to do this, and we will also try to find some local partners for you. Mr. Young, you talked about the infrastructure, ICT, power, industrial park. Well, these are already, we talked about this. And your company is dealing with project development and linking the project with financial institution and also helping in implementation. I find this is interesting. This is a good service you are providing to the investors. If you think that you need some support from BIDA, yes, BIDA is always there to support you. And you talked about that you are already in this Dhaka Stock Exchange. Why not you are also going to Chittagong Stock Exchange with Mr. Asif Ibrahim, the moderator is, he is the chairman of the Chittagong Stock Exchange, and he offered you 25% of the stock exchange of Chittagong. So you can also definitely go there and invest. And Mr. Asif Ibrahim, he is a veteran businessman and he knows his job very good. So I think that your investment will be very safe and profitable in Chittagong Stock Exchange. I would rather advertise Chittagong Stock Exchange to you. This is an opportunity for you. Mr. Link, he joined later on and he talked about ICT. Yes, we already talked about it. Mr. Shariful Islam from Mitsui, you raised some of the concern. Connectivity, when we had a meeting with His Excellency Ito, the ambassador from Japan to Bangladesh, this issue came up and we took it up with Bangladesh Biman, but you also raised the question of the Bangladesh Biman's ranking in terms of, I don't know, international ranking. But Bangladesh Biman, lately they are improving, and I believe that the Japanese CUs can rely on Bangladesh Biman's safety and security, because Bangladesh Biman it is new flagship ships in their flight. So I don't think that it is unsafe for the Japanese CEOs. In that case, you can also try whether any Japanese airlines is interested to come to Bangladesh direct from Japan. That's really important for investment. I can assure you on UDB, because BIDA is working relentlessly for improving the ease of doing business in Bangladesh, not only in terms of, as I mentioned in my opening remarks, not only in terms of narrow framework of World Bank ease of doing business. We are working in a larger scale so that the private sector find it more comfortable doing business, starting a business in this country. We could not improve much on some of the areas, some of the indicators like enforcing a contract or resolving insolvency. But this year we have already made a plan. We will start working on these two indicators also. But in other indicators, I believe that this year, when the World Bank's ease of doing business index is declared, I believe that will improve much. But because of this COVID, we could not do much. But whatever we did, we are hopeful that we'll be doing better this year also. And next year, we will try our best to improve this UDB ranking much better. I talked about this automotive service sector, infrastructure. Matalbari, you are working. You did not face any specific issues. So if you find any issues that needs to be resolved, please come to BIDA. BIDA will try its best to expedite the resolution of any problem that comes up in the in implementing the investment project. Mr. June, I am a little bit confused. Mr. Tariq Huya June, are you Bangladeshi or Japanese? Anyway, I'm just kidding.
So, sir, he's both Bangladeshi and Japanese, half and half. He represents both countries. Yeah.
Very good, very good. You talked about the OSS. We are trying the hardest to develop our one-stop service portal. It is working. At the moment, we are providing 18 services online. Even during this COVID public holidays, we disposed of almost 1,000 cases. And we are trying to integrate other services from different agencies of the government. At the moment, we have 11 MUs signed already with 11 government agencies, and we are going for more MUs. And at the end of next year, maybe, because this year we cannot do it. We had a sort of a target to integrate all 154 services of 35 government agencies by this year, but because of this COVID and other issues, we could not do it. Maybe next year we will be able to integrate all the 154 services that is needed by the private investors through one-stop services. And Bangladesh Bank, by the way, you perhaps noticed that Bangladesh Bank is working very hard to ease the private sector issues. Last week, they issued one circular that allows remittance of the international investors without permission of the Bangladesh Bank. So that's a big jump, I think, for the foreign investors. And we are continuously engaged with NBR for your cause. I know this is very, it's a hard nut to peck sometimes, but we are trying, we are rather fighting with NBR to make the life of the private investors in Bangladesh easier. Today at 3 o'clock, we have a meeting with which will be chaired by the Principal Secretary to the Honorable Prime Minister. And NBR, Bangladesh Bank, and other government agencies will be there. We will try to come up with some of the issues that the private sector faces in the country. If we can come to some consensus, that will be a big news. I'm not giving any words because that is with the government, but we are trying our best to support the private sector. The last speaker, Mr. Ping from PSA, I know that you are working, you are interested in the Bay Terminal. It's a huge project, and there are some other companies from other countries also who are also engaged in it. Definitely, BIDA is at your side to provide any support that you need for your work. I don't know whether PSA is just interested in the Bay Terminal. You can also come up with other projects in other infrastructure projects, because as you mentioned that when the Bay Terminal will be in operation, you need the road connection, you need the rail connection and other infrastructure development. You can come up with the investment also for those infrastructure projects. Thank you very much. I will stop here.
Thank you very much, sir, for your observations and for responding to each and every queries or concerns of the investors who attended today's meeting. We do have Bangladesh private sector present here as well, well represented. May I now ask Mr. Naseem Manzoor, Said Naseem Manzoor, to kindly briefly give his perspectives about what has been discussed so far.
Thank you, Mr. Asif Ibrahim, and thanks to our executive chairman and members of BIDA, as well as our friends from abroad and members of the private sector. I think our executive chairman started off well by talking about 50% of the FDI in Bangladesh is reinvestment. And I think for our friends from Japan and our friends from Singapore and China, I think the fact that Bangladesh itself is profitable is the reason why investment flows to a country. As a member of the private sector, I can tell you that even JETRO has surveys which has shown that in terms of profitability, Bangladesh always ranks higher, even though the competitiveness is low. So investment flows where there are good returns, and if you can see that 50% of FDI is reinvestment, that shows that we are a profitable destination. However, there is a lot of room for improvement as always, and I think our present BIDA leadership, headed by our executive chair, is very, if I can say, open to constructive criticism, sir, and we appreciate that. And I think we know that a lot more needs to be done. What Anderson from JETRO started off with the motorcycle industry specifically, reducing registration fees. I think these are the kind of actionable recommendations that BIDA needs to be, if I can say, fighting for with NBR. I think the single biggest pain point for investment, be it local or be it foreign, is in Bangladesh, and not in any ranking, is number 1, NBR, number 2, Bangladesh Bank, and number 3, usually, unfortunately, also sometimes the Ministry of Finance. The rest of it can be managed. I really think that a body, a platform where foreign investors and maybe also local investors can use the access of BIDA to access these 3 bodies regularly on a scheduled matter, not waiting for problems to come. It can be monthly, it can be fortnightly, you have to. These are the 3 biggest problems to investment. And I will name them again: NBR, Bangladesh Bank, and Ministry of Finance. You clear a pathway to that, and you will see investment more. Sabrina, I think you mentioned automation, and you said bigger trends in automation, and Singapore is a great leader in efficiency, and we keep reading how Singapore is the most efficient or competitive nation in the world. I think you would be surprised, and I think it would be useful for Singaporean companies to focus on opportunities of making efficiency a business in Bangladesh, whether it's improving efficiency in our RMG sector, whether it's improving efficiency in third-party logistics and supply chain, whether it's improving efficiency in healthcare delivery. I mean, COVID has changed everything, right? We can now get everything on our phone, which even 2 months ago we could not. And I think traditional investors have looked at it from a very traditional point of view, power plant, transmission, port, but there's a lot more to the Bangladesh economy than just big infrastructure. There is a massive, massive consumer revolution happening in this market. And it's a favorite statistic of mine, I think, Ando-san and for Sabrina. I mean, Bangladesh is one of the biggest markets for Swiss ice cream. Swiss ice cream. So, you really need to be looking at this market from a completely different lens. Stop thinking about what government can do. Think about what the government can make accessible for your consumers. If you look about FMCG, cosmetics, Ando-san, I mean, you have some of the best cosmetic companies in the world. I'm surprised that more cosmetic Japanese companies are not coming. Some of them are coming, but I think we need many more to come to Bangladesh. So automation, not just in the typical automation, but automating small companies, automating ERP, small solutions. And Singapore is brilliant at this, small and medium enterprise automation. The other thing you mentioned, and I was very interested, was medical supply. Sabina mentioned this. India has very successfully used refinishing and repackaging in America as a way to access the American pharmaceutical market, thereby making FDA certification easier. Both for Japan and for Singapore, Bangladesh can use Singapore as an entry point into these countries. What do I mean by that? If Singaporean companies would come and joint venture or partner or allow access to some kind of finishing value addition in Singapore and then re-export from Singapore, it will give us duty-free access to America, which has an FTA, if I'm not mistaken. It will allow us entry into Japan, which is a much more regulated market. And of course, the certification from Singapore is much more credible than the certification from Bangladesh. We have to accept that as a reality. So not just looking at making everything in Bangladesh and then trying to sell, but doing, let's say, 3/4 of the process in Bangladesh, using Singapore as a finishing point, and also because of the logistics efficiency, which is incredible, and then accessing the Japanese market. Understand, we have spent a lot of time in Singapore accessing Japanese companies, and we know how many companies are regionally headquartered in Singapore. So a joint approach to attack the Japanese market using Singapore for Bangladesh could be something very productive. The fifth point, and I recognize Ifti Islam for bringing this up, is that global value chains, and we're talking about supply security. I think the talk for Bangladesh in a post-COVID world, given what's happening with the China-US relationship, is no longer about lower cost. It's no longer cheaper than China. Bangladesh, in many cases, is not and will not be cheaper than China. We don't have free land. We don't have subsidized, energy costs. We don't have tax holidays for 25 years. But Bangladesh offers supply chain security, which is now critical. I work in the leather footwear space, and I'm surprised at how many US brands like Tommy Hilfiger, like Guess, like Banana Republic today want another source. It's no longer about being cheaper than China. I need to diversify my risk on China as my #1 source. Vietnam is becoming expensive. Here again, I think Japanese, Singapore brands can use Bangladesh as a re-export opportunity. Don't just look at the local opportunity. We have duty-free access to China and India. Our chairman just mentioned 97%, massive opportunity. And I firmly believe this is the decade, if not the century, for Asia, so we can do this. I think Mr. Sharif from Mitsui talked about, June talked about making sure that companies that have invested in Bangladesh from Japan, make them front and center. And I think Ando-san would agree with me. I think we need to have those success stories out. Also, Ando-san, I know it's very difficult in the Japanese culture, but I find Japanese companies are very keen to talk about the problems privately, but when we have a public forum, you don't want to speak out. And you're going to miss this chance, my friend, because you have the BIDA chairman here. You need to tell us where the shoe pinches, otherwise it's not going to get fixed. If you have a problem with Bangladesh Bank, you have to say it. If you have a problem with NBR, you have to say it. 2 recommendations specifically to the BIDA chairman and his team. 1, you must allow import of used machinery. You must. You cannot have this restriction, oh, you have to buy only new machines. Nobody does this anymore. We will pick up machinery from our Vietnam factory, Cambodia factory, Japanese factory, send it to Bangladesh and make it work. You have to change this mentality. Mr. Ling, investment in Bangladesh. Thank you for, I think pointing out what is possible in the digital space. But I would like to encourage companies from China to look beyond just immediate trading opportunities. I would like to see more Chinese investment long-term in areas like healthcare management. We know of many, many private hospitals in Bangladesh that could benefit from healthcare management from Singapore, from Japan, even from China, especially in a post-COVID world. Food security, processed food, Japan is a leader. China is also very strong, Singapore. How do you make packaged food more accessible, more safe for Bangladeshi consumers? And last but not least, the digitalization of services. Whether it's buying tickets online, whether it's buying health services online, whether it's paying for services, there is a lot that we can learn from China, Singapore, and Japan. And I think there are areas beyond just big infrastructure that Japanese companies and Singapore companies and Chinese companies can be looking at. So in conclusion, I would like to once again request the BIDA chair to create this platform specifically, BIDA, NBR, Bangladesh Bank, Ministry of Finance. The rest of it, I think we can sort out. And just a quick comment on land. I hear this a lot. And with the deepest respect to my friends from China, Bangladesh is a tiny country. We're half the size of New York State and we have 170 million people. We cannot hand out land as you have handed out land in Japan and in Vietnam. It's not possible. All the land in Bangladesh does not belong to the state. I have this argument with Chinese investors who come in and say, well, I need 100 acres of land. We don't have 100 acres of land. You have to figure out ways to make that work on 10 acres. You have to make the factories vertical. Here we can learn from Singapore, we can learn from China, and we can learn also from Japan, which is a land-starved country. We have to become more efficient. So we cannot hand out land like other countries, like Africa, for example. We have to learn to do with what we have. We have a lot of people, we have enterprising workers, and we have tremendous resilience. So let's make that work for us. Thank you, Asif, for this opportunity.
Thank you so very much, Syed Naseem Manzoor, for being very candid and forthright about your observations and suggesting to the BIDA chair regarding our problems with the National Board of Revenue, Bangladesh Bank, and the Ministry of Finance, where it all gets entangled. The issues needs to be untangled and in order to facilitate further investment in Bangladesh. I would now like to leading development. Mr. Abul Qasim Khan, would you like to say something at this point?
Thank you, Asif. I'll be very brief. I think Naseem covered all the points very well and he went into the details. I will not repeat myself. I would like to thank the BIDA chairman for organizing this discussion. I think it's a good way forward. If we can continue, I think a lot of grievances and loopholes that the investors are facing can be mitigated over the table. So this is a good dialogue platform. I think it should continue and it should be structured. I think Resurgent Bangladesh can be part of it. Just coming back to what Naseem was saying, the domestic market of Bangladesh. We are the 8th largest country having a population of 165 million. The domestic market itself is huge. Naseem is in the consumer market, he knows very well. All the telcos are doing great in Bangladesh in terms of the customer base and size. We are the 35th largest, growing at a 8% growth for the last couple of years, though this year the growth will come down because of the virus. But we will jump back. So what I'm trying to make, Bangladesh needs a lot of investments in infrastructure. If you go into the details of the growth of each of the East Asian countries, including if you add China and South Korea, they had heavily invested in the infrastructure, about 8 to 10% of their GDP. For the last 20 years, China went on beyond 30 years. if you look at Bangladesh, we're investing about 2 to 3% of our GDP. There's a huge gap. And that is where I think if we can invest about 6 to 7% of our GDP, I think we can push our growth beyond 10%. And this is where the foreign investors would need to come in, to fill in the blanks, because the quantum of investment, if you look at, if we are having a GDP size of $300+ billion, and if you invest 5%, that's a huge investment that has to be made in the infrastructure. So here, I think we as Bangladeshi companies also would like to see a lot of foreign investment in the PPP partnership method, and also on the joint ventures. So if you look at the infrastructure projects, there are opportunities in logistics, warehousing, private ports, roads, toll roads. Even if you see Dhaka-Chittagong highway, it requires a 8-lane highway, and I know China, Japan, and Singapore, they're brilliant in doing toll roads and BOT bases. So there are a lot of opportunities for Bangladesh to grab. Is Bangladesh ready? Bangladesh is somewhat ready. We are ready. We just need to make some amendments, which Nasim rightly pointed out, with the NBR and other government stakeholders. I think we are ready for business. We are ready to take off, and the country is ready. It's how fast the investors come in. So with these words, I would again thank the Honorable Chairman for giving us the opportunity to meet the investors, and I hope this process continues. And thank you for all the investors for coming and sharing your thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Khan. I would now like to hear from the President of Dhaka Chamber of Commerce, Mr. Shams Mahmood.
Thank you, Asif Bhai. First of all, thank you to the private sector. Very good afternoon to everyone. One of the things I really want to touch upon is that over the last 12 years, we have seen that the relationship between the private sector and the government in Bangladesh, is more friendlier now. The mere fact that the private sector here is being represented, and we are speaking our mind as well, trying to convince foreign investors coming in, shows that we have a very friendly environment at the moment. Talks are taking place. Like any other country in the world, there are stumbling blocks, but through dialogue, we're trying to find out what the bottlenecks are, and we're trying to resolve them. One of the points I want to address is we talked about the automotive sector over here, and recently there has been a policy undertaken by the Bangladesh government, which is catered to the electronic vehicle market. Have fixed for electronic vehicles charging is around 6 cents. Usually it's 11 cents in Bangladesh. So I think the government is actively thinking about this sector, and this is also another sector where we can look for investment. Electronic vehicle, as we know, has very less components. It's a very simple design and architecture. So this is something we can look into, and also the manufacturing of electronic vehicle battery. Looking inwards, I think there's a huge opportunity even for the local market when we think about Bangladesh, is the digitization of documents. This is being, in the last few years, we have seen the government is trying to digitize most of the documents they have, and also the private sector is also going there. So this is something investors can also look into, especially with this, and also data processing and outsourcing. Bangladesh has a unique advantage with the time zones difference, like 6 hours plus GMT. So this is something with the population advantage we have and the time zone difference. I think this is another avenue we can look into. And also recently, like new sector like cell phone assembly, Samsung has just manufactured the Samsung Note 10 Lite in Bangladesh. So these are new things which are coming up. Danone, the French company, they have a joint venture in Bangladesh which is doing very good. So new avenues are being opened up. And lastly, I just want to echo what Mr. Nasim Manzoor said, that the local internal economy of Bangladesh is a huge potential for foreign investors. Personally, I know like 3 or 4 companies who were in the food processing industry. They set up their plants trying to export, value-added processed food. But it's been 4 or 5 years. They're still expanding in Bangladesh just to cater to the domestic market. They have forgotten about exporting. So the market is huge. And over here, the SME supply chain is very strong in Bangladesh, which can easily support any food processing industry in Bangladesh. So with that, I just would like, again, take the opportunity to thank you everyone for joining today. And I would like to hand over to Asif Bhai. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Shams, for your observations, and you correctly point out some of the new investments and opportunities, particularly in the area of electronics. That is something that the investors can look into. I think we've had a very candid discussion. It's been almost 2 hours. So first of all, I would like to thank everybody for your patience, for staying together for such a long time. We've had different perspectives, different viewpoints. I would now like to hand over to the chairman, executive chairman of BIDA, to kindly give his observations regarding what has been discussed over the last couple of hours, and how the way forward, how we can actually make it meaningful, this entire effort of getting everybody together and discussing candidly, semi-candidly, the issues that needs to be addressed in order to facilitate further investment at a faster rate in our country. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Asif. It's almost 2 hours, so I think that we should cut it short. The discussion that took place, particularly said Mr. Nasim Manzoor, Mr. Abul Qasim Khan, Sanis Mahmood, all of you talked about the potential of the local market. And yes, I also believe that if we can have a good response from NPR and Bangladesh Bank, I don't think that the Ministry of Finance is that problem. In fact, it is the NBR. In fact, they're responsible for the revenue collection, and ultimately they report to the Ministry of Finance, and Ministry of Finance come up with the decision. So if we can handle it better with NBR and Bangladesh Bank, I think everything will be solved. And we are trying our best. As I mentioned, that we will have just from within 2 hours, that is at 3 o'clock, we have a meeting, and Chairman NBL will be connected. I believe that Bangladesh Bank governor or some of his executive directors will be there. Secretary, Ministry of Commerce, Ministry of Finance will be there. So definitely I will tell them what you have told me. So I will definitely tell them that this is what the private sector is thinking, and you need to do something to ease the private sector concern. Yes, there are many other sectors which are emerging in Bangladesh, and digital technology is the base. And I believe in the saying that after COVID-19, the world will not go back to the normal, what the world experts are saying. And I believe in that. The world will be going back to some new normal. And that new normal will be based on digital technology. So yes, a big investment can be made in the digital technology in various shapes. So I would like to request our foreign investors, particularly from Singapore, China, and Japan, to come up with investment in this information technology sector. Before I thank you to you all, I would like to just give floor to two of my colleagues who in fact joined, who are waiting here for 2 hours. If I do not give them the chance, they may feel frustrated that the chairman is taking the whole cake. So I would like to ask Mr. Navas Chandra Mondal, who is looking after the foreign investment, to say something what BIDA can do for the private sector to the foreign investors from his desk. Mr. Navas Chandra Mondal, Executive Member, BIDA.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. And thank you, Mr. Chair. So, sir, all points are already, sir, discussed. You replied all points, and from our Bangladesh business leaders also covered all points. So there is no any vacant. But from my side, first of all, I convey my heartiest thanks to MCCI President, Ms. Niyat Kabir, and Dr. Masroor Riaz, Chairman Policy Exchange, and former Senior Economist of World Bank, and all high-profile distinguished business leaders and government officials from Japan, Singapore, South Korea, and China to join this auspicious event. So it's a rare opportunity, I think, to meet with you all. East Asia business dialogue. As you know, as the country, we have very good relationships with Singapore, South Korea, China, and Japan. And our economy is very vibrant. Our growth rate is very positive. Per capita income is very lucrative. Purchasing power parity is very high. And our economy is ultimately growing. Our local market is very big. And among the South Asian region, Bangladesh maintains very attractive business-friendly environment, I think, and continuously working on policy reforms for doing business smoothly in Bangladesh. As a result, you know, from 2009, our FDI is increasing since 2009, though there are some fluctuation in 2014, 2017, and 2019. But our reinvested earnings are increasing, that you are already know and discussed in this meeting. Last 2 years, we have got highest FDI from China. And according to the World Investment Report 2009 of UNCTAD, among top 20 countries, we have taken
Mr. Navas, would you please, Mr. Navas, would you please say something what BIDA can do for our international investors? Okay?
Sir.
What you can do for the international investors, please, go ahead.
Sir, we provide all sort of services to investors with a shortly possible time, and you know, BIDA already implemented OSS, and now all services we provide from OSS, and every investors can apply through OSS platform. And we try to resolve all issues that we place to BIDA with our end. I think this type of initiatives we can continue, And I have another points. Due to corona pandemic, many countries like Japan, India, Singapore, they have their own strategy to protect their own investment. Also, the investment relocate from other countries or any other product. So many of the countries who are interested to relocate their industries, Bangladesh welcome them. Bangladesh is always ready to serve them, and whenever they think to meet any type of service or any type of problems, we will always ready to attend their request and provide to resolve it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Now I would like to request Ms. Mohsina Yasmin, Executive Member, Local Industry, to speak.
So far, the discussion have been very long and thoroughly discussed everything. I had nothing to add, but I want to say that there is a task force constituted already to recovery and retention plan on the COVID impact after impacting investment. So we have taken notes and we are working on in the task force to develop our investment, both local and foreign. So I think these suggestions, comments will help us to give a strategy or prepare a strategy so that our investment can be developed as so. So that's all from my side. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, Mohsina. Mr. Arif, do you like to say something?
Thank you, sir. I think everything is being said. On our desk level, sir, what we can ensure to our revered investors and the business leaders that, as Nawaz sir has said, we will be giving our best effort to support their cause as we are doing. And for any particular issue at the desk level, we will be there for a disposal. That's from our. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you. I want to finish, but before that, I have another colleague. I call him colleague because they are working very closely with BIDA from IFC. Mr. Rahmat Ali is there. He is waiting the whole time. He is with us. So, Mr. Rahmat Ali, you please go ahead for a short comment. Unmute please, then talk. You're mute, yes, please.
Thank you, sir, for giving me the opportunity. So first of all, I would like to thank BIDA. I think the private sector must felt that from April onwards, the attitude of the BIDA has been shifting. Earlier, private sector used to come to BIDA presenting their issues and all other things, but from the April, BIDA is reaching out to the private sector, asking their like challenges and opportunities during the COVID and the post-COVID arena, and taking several actions accordingly. I think this is a paradigm shift, and private sector must take it very positively, that we heard from the different discussions of the different chambers. So this is a big shift, sir. In terms of investment attraction, as Mohsina Appa said, that we are working very closely to identify specific sectors. I think that these particular dialogue will contribute in selecting some of the sectors, because we already know that ICT could be a potential one, for example. And I also like to say that I fully agree with what Nasim Bhai said. Sir, this is a very important thing, that not every company has to come in Bangladesh and have to start a big plan, sir. It could be a part of their value chain, sir. That is an approach that can be like find out more in the coming days, that how we can do that in food processing, in other things, sir, that can help both Bangladesh as well as the companies in this area. So IFC will be working with you as we are working right now to support, and also with the private sector as required. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. I don't know, should I make the closing remark, or Barrister Nihat Kabir and Masroor Riaz, would you like to make any comment before we leave? Because you arranged this.
Sir, we request you to give the concluding remarks and the way forward.
So you asked me to?
We ask you to.
Please go ahead and sir, offer your concluding remarks. Nothing further from me or Barrister.
Okay. Thank you very much. I don't have much more to talk because we have talked a lot. But talking should be targeted to doing something. We want to implement what we talk. So from BIDA's end, what we are promising, I would like to reiterate that what we talked, we will try to do. We will try to make the life of the private investors, both local and the foreign investors, easy in Bangladesh, from business to carrying out the business. That's what BIDA is mandated for. So, as you know, that ultimately it is the government who implements the policies. But what BIDA can do is we can advocate the policy, we can bring reforms in the policy that is needed for expansion of the business or making the investment easier in this country. And we are looking forward to work with all of you who joined today. And as I mentioned in my opening space, that next time we will be engaged with country-specific investors. We have already planned 2 meetings, in fact, one with Singapore and another with Japan. In fact, on 22nd of July, we will engage with Japan, and maybe sometime second week of July or first week of July with Singapore. And then definitely we'll have meetings with China and South Korea and other countries also. Because of this COVID-19 problem, we cannot go in person. And I think this is an opportunity also that we can move faster than physical movement. We can arrange the meeting much faster than going to the other countries. So we'll be doing this continuously. And as I told you, I'm assuring you again that what has been told, I will relay to the government agencies, and we will try to get it done. Thank you very much. Thank you everyone for joining us today. I must thank Mr. Masroor Riaz, Barrister Nihat Kabir, Mr. Asif Ibrahim, Mr. Nasim Manjur, Mr. Abul Qasim Khan, and Mr. Ando from Jatro. He is working for a long time with Bangladesh, in fact. Ms. Sabrina, who is a counterpart of BIDA from Singapore, and all others who joined from Singapore, China, and Japan. And also, I must thank my colleagues from BIDA who were working relentlessly even during the public holidays, as I mentioned. And also Mr. Rahmat Ali and his team from IFC who joined today. Thank you very much. Thank you. We look forward to working together. And as you mentioned, we'll be engaging from time to time. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you all. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone from
Thank you.
China, Singapore, and Japan.
Thank you.
Thank
and
you.
Bangladesh.
Thank you.